This is Puri. Welcome to my channel. I'm here today with Lily Kunning, who is a herbalist and a wellness coach and educator. Welcome, Lily. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you as well for coming, doing this video session with us and informing everyone about what is herbalism and its background. So, if you don't mind, starting with how you got involved in herbalism and how long you've been doing this.
Sure. I got interested in herbalism because it helped me twice when nothing else did. The first time I was 32 and I went into early perimenopause, and when I saw my doctor, she was very dismissive, saying I was too young, that's not what it was, and et cetera, et cetera. But she didn't do any tests, and so I had all these perimenopausal symptoms and nowhere to go with it. And at the time, I didn't know a whole lot about herbalism, and I walked into a store in San Francisco where I was living at the time, and the herbalist there was like, oh, well, that sounds like early perimenopause. Here, try this herb. And so she gave me a little tincture bottle, and 3 months later after taking it, I was regular. I went on later in life to have a child. Everything normalized. So that was fascinating to me, that this one plant extract helped me. And then when I got injured on the job, I was on workers' comp, I had pre-designated my doctor to be an acupuncturist, because in California you can do that. And so she oversaw my entire treatment, and I was able to get functional and pain-free without surgery, which was my goal. And so, I got really interested and was really excited to see that there was an herb school in Western herbalism near where I lived in Oakland, California. And so I went to that program, and it was a 3-year program with a clinical internship. It was focused on clinical herbalism. And about 8 years ago, I moved to Ohio and started doing herbalism here.
Wow, what an extensive background you have in herbalism. So let's start with what is herbalism, and what are some basic principles and some guidelines, and how long herbalism have been practiced?
Oh, wow. So herbalism has been practiced all over the world for as long as there have been people and plants together. And every sort of culture has its own herbalisms. I've been trained in Western herbalism, which came out of Europe. And in the United States, it also assimilated a lot of indigenous herbalism that was happening here on the North American continent, and also the herbalisms of people who have immigrated here. So my herbalism, includes all kinds of indigenous stuff, Western herbalism, which is European, Ayurveda, and TCM. And after I moved here to Columbus, I actually started learning traditional Chinese medicine and going to school for acupuncture and things like that. So I've kept my hands in being educated and learning lots of new things. But everyone has an herbalism. And, while a lot of people think of it as really distinct and separate from sort of the modern biochemical model of medicine, it wasn't until 1986 that most pharmaceuticals weren't majority sourced from plant material. Up until that point, it was extracted and compounded from plants. And after that, we started seeing synthesized medicine. But that was more about profit margin and bottom line, as opposed to anything that was more effective. It was still the chemical compounds that originated from plants.
I see. But interesting background, like long-term information on herbalism and how long it's been present for many, many years. Very interesting. So how is this herbalism different than other forms of alternative practice that exist?
Well, yeah, I mean, each continent has sort of come up with their own models of how they see the body and how they see human beings in their environment. All holistic modalities look beyond just the systems of the body and see how they integrate with each other and the environment around them. In Western herbalism, you look at someone's constitution, which is, how their body responds to things in the world, and are they damp, are they dry, are they hot, are they cold? There's a lot of different variables, and you kind of pick plants that are suited for them, as well as the condition and symptoms that they're manifesting. So we look also at the energetics of the plant. So we look at constitutions of people and plants and sort of match them together for plants that would assist in different conditions that people are experiencing. So, and it's the same with all sort of holistic herbalisms, whether that's Ayurveda or TCM. Often there are prescribed diets or supplements or plants to kind of ameliorate conditions.
That's interesting how you say the constitution of the body, because I feel like that's across several alternative practices. Like you mentioned, Ayurveda, depending on how the person is, are they cold, hot, how they react to the nature and how their body overall is, and then deciding specifically how that person alone will benefit from that treatment, instead of just overall, you have this, here it is, here's a pill.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I tell my herb students all the time, herbalists treat people, we don't treat conditions. So like when somebody comes to me and says, help me with my eczema, I ask them a whole lot of questions, and they're wondering like, what does this have to do with my skin, right? But it's a very different way of looking at the body and people in general, and then treating them for specific conditions.
So my whole question, next thing is, what do you come across as the common illnesses in the years you've been practicing?
Well, it's funny. I was trained in California, and so the issues that people come up with on a recurrent basis are different there than in Ohio. Okay. When I first moved to Ohio, I opened up a little herb shop, and I had that for 4 years, and I very quickly had to increase the respiratory shelf. So I had all of the different remedies and tonics by system of the body shelf, so that I could find them more easily. And so, I had an immune shelf, and I had, a digestive shelf, and I had 2 shelves of respiratory, because particularly central Ohio, we're a basin, everything just sort of like comes down on us and stays there. There's a lot of particulates in the air. We've got both agricultural runoff and industrial runoff. There's a lot of air pollution. So there's high incidences of asthma and COPD and chronic bronchitis. And so, yeah, I see a lot of respiratory stuff. But the thing that is most disturbing, and I've talked to other practitioners in other parts of the country and the world, is that we have seen a pretty substantial uptick in autoimmune dysfunction and cancer. And I think that's because we continue to poison ourselves, generally speaking. And so we're seeing some pretty serious impact with the toxins that are in our food supply, in our air, in our water, in our products that we buy to care for our bodies and clean our homes. I think we're all kind of suffering from those things.
Which triggers me to ask, do you believe in how a person eats and their lifestyle affecting their health overall from herbal perspective?
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually working on this live interactive webinar series. It's a group wellness coaching 6-week plan for people with chronic illness or chronic pain. And we go through 6 different areas. It starts with diet and nutrition, because what you put into your body forms the foundation of the cells that you create, right? So how could it not impact your health?
Exactly, makes sense.
Second week, we go through toxins and sort of detoxifying our home, the cleaning products, the body care products, all of that. And people are usually pretty alarmed when they see what's going on in their home. Then we do movement and exercise, sleep hygiene, stress management, and emotional wellness. We do a whole series, 6 weeks, of, learning about these things and then getting homework assignments. What we do in our lives impacts our lives, absolutely.
So you mentioned this wellness program. Is it specifically triggered, focused on providers and the people that are interested in becoming herbal specialists, or anybody can learn about this?
Oh, this is aimed at people who have chronic pain, chronic illness, cancer. I teach classes at Cancer Support Community, so I get a lot of folks who are looking to see me to get well. And after seeing clients for years one-on-one, I realized there are some common denominators that we should probably all cover before I start doing any sort of case management. So the Wellness in Weeks program is for everyone, regardless of where they're starting. But I do have, I mentioned students before, I do have an 18-month intensive program to learn Western herbalism. And then I do apprenticeships afterwards to help people become better clinicians and things like that.
Okay, so that's information, good information, because if providers are seeing this, or if people in general, depending on the extent of how much they want to dive into this and learn, or just take a 6-week program just to get a head start on what is herbalism, it's helpful to know this information. Thank you for sharing that.
For sure, yeah.
So my next thing is are there any contraindication? I'm always thinking about that, because being a Western allopathic practitioner, I'm always wondering, are there contraindications with somebody who like you mentioned, chronic illnesses, but they're also on multiple medications that are allopathic medications. So if you would like to elaborate on that.
For sure. One of the things in my intake form, the intake form takes at least 20 minutes for someone to fill out. Is I need a list of all the pharmaceuticals and supplements that they're on, because I have to methodically go through, see how those particular pharmaceuticals work in the body, what pathways they work on, things like that, so that I am not interfering with the medication that they have. I also, there are definitely some contraindications for some herbs, because they do some of the same actions as pharmaceuticals, and you certainly wouldn't want something to be overdone, So yeah, I look at that very carefully when I take on new clients for case management before I create any formulas for them. Okay. The other thing is, what was I going to say? I often will create custom formulas for people. And it's based on that person and what they need, and it may address several different issues that we're working on. I'll often pick like 3 things that will give us the maximum, return for the money, really. Like,
get out of it.
It'll have the biggest impact on their well-being. So I'll often create a custom formula, but not always, when I am working with them through their case management. And I'll often find that people are prescribed multiple drugs for the same condition. And I'll be like, have you talked to your practitioner about this? Because, I'll say, you need to bring this list to your practitioner. I don't think they realize all of the pharmaceuticals that you're actually on currently. And so a lot of what I do is actually making sure that everything's good with a lot of other practitioners. And I work with other types of practitioners on the case management to try and make sure that people are getting what they need.
Teamwork kind of thing as a team plan.
Yes, collaboration is super important.
Yes. So one thing I was wondering, if somebody who is pregnant or very young or very elderly, are there certain things they should be cautious when thinking about taking any herbs, or definitely consulting herbalists like you, but are there contraindications to somebody in that age groups?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, herbalists treat people first and then physicians. And so if someone is pregnant or lactating or immune compromised or elderly, there are definitely some things that we might want to avoid. And then, of course, we also want to look at what they're currently doing pharmaceutically, lifestyle-wise, and make those adjustments. There's definitely, it's much better to consult a professional than look on the internet. The internet's kind of a mixed bag, right? We all get to connect with each other, we all get to talk, and it seems like all the information is out there and we don't need professionals anymore. But the problem is copy-paste, right? Lots of people, they copy and then they paste on their personal thing, and so people have this idea that, oh, I've seen this particular piece of information 20 times, so it must be right. But that's not it. Nobody's vetting anything. So it's good to consult a professional for sure.
I agree. And don't rely on Dr. Google, as we say.
Dr. Google will tell you have cancer every time.
Exactly. Instead, and then also there are too much, like you've mentioned, too much of anything can also cause harm. And certain medicine, certain herbs, certain any product that you intake can also have, if you in access, have adverse effects as well. So I appreciate you mentioning that. So I was wondering, how can people incorporate herbalism in their daily life, and how can they get access if they would like to learn more or get to seek a professional for their own ailments?
Well, when I moved to Ohio, I was surprised that there weren't more herbalists. There are a handful of us, and we're in different parts of the state. Here in Columbus, it's me. But there is another herbalist in Marysville named Dawn Combs. She mostly teaches classes and writes at this point, and she has like a little storefront in downtown Marysville. In Ashtabula County, Leah Wolf does see clients as well as teach classes. There's also Katie Crabb in Athens and Erica Galanton in Athens, and they both teach and see clients. There's not a ton of us, though. But you can definitely seek us out, and all of us do online as well as in-person consultations. These days, most of them are online. Thank you, COVID-19. But we'll all consult with you. And then in terms of classes, most herbalists teach classes. We feel like now more than ever, people need access to be able to not only grow their own food, but grow their own medicine and have access to wellness. And so I've doubled down on the classes that I've been teaching, just because I feel like people really need access to this information. I think the thing that this pandemic has really shown us is that we have become too reliant on things just appearing for us, right? Just go to the supermarket and the food is there, right? But that may or may not be the case in the future. I have no way of knowing, and so being able to grow it yourself and feel empowered and save those seeds, I think is really important these days.
That makes sense. Is there a specific website, like let's say nationwide, because in case somebody's watching out of state, or that they can visit nationwide to find out herbalists nearby or get more information on what is herbalism?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of clinical herbalists that have been vetted, the American Herbalist Guild, AmericanHerbalistGuild.org, is a really great place to search for people that have gone through their professional membership. There's a listing. There's also a listing of classes that you can take in your area on herbalism. It's one of the best resources out there.
Okay. Lastly, I just want to have a question regarding what benefits have you seen as providers learning about herbalisms, and how will that help them become better professionals and to take care of their patients?
For sure. A lot of my Foundations of Western Herbalism students are practitioners of some sort. I've had nurses and nurse practitioners, MDs, dentists, massage therapists, acupuncturists, Ayurvedic practitioners all come through the class, and it definitely adds to their toolkit. And who doesn't need more tools, right? As someone who has gone through a lot of wellness modalities in getting better myself, when I am coaching other people, I have all of that information, and I often will make referrals. Herbalism does amazing things, but sometimes you need body work. Sometimes you need like actual hands-on things, musculoskeletal alignment. And so I can't do that for you. So I have a network of different practitioners that I like to recommend to people, just because I personally think that they're fantastic practitioners and really listen to their clients and help them solve their problems.
Okay, so thank you very much for sharing this information with us today, and I appreciate telling us about what is herbalism, how people can get access to it, the common contraindications, and all the information for people to better their health holistically overall. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody, please share, like, and subscribe, and share with somebody who would benefit from learning about herbalism and are going through chronic illnesses and ailments that would love, benefit from connecting with an herbalist specialist or alternative practice specialist to find other ways to help them with their daily life and holistic healing overall. Thank you. Thank you.